Why Debian? This is how I started on free software and why I chose Debian in the end. It was many years ago, and this is what I'm going to talk, is my history with open source. I will talk a little about myself. I'll talk about important events in 90. Things that happened to me in 90s. The first contact with Red Hat, the first contact with Debian, and the end, conclusion. I'm sysadmin of Unix and Linux since 2093. I'm a Debian contributor since I don't know where. I'm programmer of software libre on free time. I started with switch-conf, small program for switching config files in a laptop, but can be used anywhere. It is used in a big box of disks from a big company. I can talk later in outside the rooms. Data daemon. I decided to. This is the daemon that do schedule jobs with some delay or with queues. And now logcheck. That is a program that checks the logs of the machines to ML whatever it is interesting in the logs of the computer. And I'm a Debian developer since February of 2017. What happened in 90s that was very important to me? The GNU Manifesto. There was the first release of Linux. There was Internet at INESC. It is an investigation research institute near Technic, where most of the teachers from computer science and electronics, they have their cabinet there and they have their research. Most of them are there. Some computers here in Technic had access to the internet. It's not well. It's just some computers, not all of them. There was a release of the first web browser, Netscape Mosaic, and there was Portuguese Unix user group. And I don't know if you know what is the PUG. Okay, some people know. This was a Portuguese Unix user group, as it says the title, that managed to give internet to everyone else that wanted to have internet and was not in a company or on the university. And I put it here as important too, that there was a time for Windows 4 groups with the extra of TCP/IP to have internet at home. If you don't know how to use computers, this was the most easiest way to have internet at home, Windows forward groups. What was important to me in the beginning? I started to have classes here in Técnico. I'm from the first year of Licenciatura em Engenharia Informática e Computadores. I was the first. I belonged to the first batch of students. There was workstations with running Unix from digital. There were some of them that were available to us. And to assess that workstations, you had test terminals, that's why I call it VT, and some little later, X11 terminals, black and white, and one or two of colors. And it was the first time that I've read GNU Manifesto, and I was, wow. This has a big impact on me, the GNU Manifesto. A bunch of people doing free software for their free time, giving everyone the possibility to do their changes, to have the code, to do what they feel it was best, and the only obligation was to give it back. And I had access of GNU tools because these Unix, commercial Unix that you have, most of them was just the bare bones of Unix. So most of time sysadmin of that machine installed GNU tools to have a better shell, bash, to have a compiler, a debugger, an editor besides VI, Vim is later, or a better tar. And I had access to the group of computer graphics in Dinesh, had access to some workstations from Silicon Graphics with a very advanced graphical ambience. What happened at that time? There was some laboratories with some PCs, 386 with 5 megabytes of RAM. Do you see how long it was? Running a Unix SCO. But they are so useful to us that we have better things to do, that is to start MS-DOS, to run Turbo Pascal and Turbo C for doing our classes, our homeworks, or to install Linux. It's not me, I was installing Linux, I didn't know enough about Unix at that time, but I was a user. And someone started the Linux on these computers, I was trying there to see they doing their magic. And what was most interesting thing is that these computers were almost as fast as a digital workstation. Another interesting thing is that the first versions of Linux, before 1.0, was much more stable than commercial Unix. This means that everyone who doing classes, sometimes you need to do a fork bomb by mistake. Someone put the IP address of another computer. This was enough to make the Unix workstations going kaboom. They were not very resilient. Linux was. That's why it caught my eye again, because it was much more stable, much more powerful, much more features than the commercial Unix. And later, on that time, I was doing my thesis, my final work at Dinesh, and I had access to some more graphical workstations of Unix. What happened in 1993? I bought my first PC able to run Linux. Before that, I had a PC 88. Yes, that was running for DOS, and then I could buy a 486 to run Linux and other systems. Of course, I was doing at that time, I went for triple boot. One system was not enough, two systems were not enough, I went for 3. DOS with Windows, OS2, and Linux Slackware. The installation was doing, as my teacher said, zillions of floppies. And if I don't remember what version it was, so I was looking for the time frame, it was Slackware 1.0 or 1.1. What was my goal with Linux? Learning Unix in general, because at that time I was saying that was the best operating system around available to people. Learning to do, or to system administrate a machine, particularly. Some decisions I done there at that time was in the focus to be a sysadmin. And a random fact, the source of Linux was small enough to fit in a small floppy at that time. Maybe you don't know, but you are talking about a floppy with little more than 1 megabyte of storage. What happened later, in 94, 95? I've done my first upgrade to Linux, to the Slackware. And at that time, you have to format and reinstall everything, and doing backups or starting over again. I finished my course, and because I was no longer studying, I was not longer in university, I needed internet. I was already hooked on it. So I bought a modem. For some time, I tried to live without internet. Didn't last more than a month. At that time, it was a good modem, a 2800 bits per second. I've done my first reinstallation of Slackware to 2.0.3.0, and it was for reinstallation. I didn't like it to do it. I didn't like to start all over again to continue using Linux just to have a better version. And with all the problems I found at Slackware at that time. So this made a big impact on me, on my choices. So it was time to upgrade again Slackware. But I didn't want to reinstall everything. So it was time to search a new Linux. At that time, it was easy to go to the shop and buy bundles of CDs with a lot of software, Linux distribution, mirrors from important sites from the internet. And I've done my first installation of Red Hat and my first installation of Debian from a CD. What was my impression in the 90s of Red Hat? It was nice. A lot of graphical applications to administer the machine. But the configuration files, they have the message, don't touch. And for someone that was learning Unix by the old school, reading books and learning how to do things by editing files, this was not very good for me. The organization of files was not like PST or System 5, the two main branches of Unix at that time. So in the end, I got the feeling that it was not a good platform to learn Unix. So I tried Debian. That was my first bundle of CDs. They had what I think was Debian on 1.3. They have some errors. Debian 2.0 was already on the internet. And as a newbie as I was, I didn't know anything how to solve the problem. I didn't know how important were that problems with 1.3. So I bought the second bundle of CDs and installed Debian 2.0. And it was, wow. The files could be managed by sysadmin. They didn't have the message, don't touch. It was the opposite, touch me. And I found out, because it was something I've read on the internet some years ago, that Debian supports upgrades without reinstallation. And change that you need to do to the files were preserved during the upgrades. The sysadmin have control of his machine. The organization of files are more like System 5, and that was good because at job I had access to Solaris machine, was the most advanced Unix at job. So I like it. It was very, very well documented inside distribution. At that time there was no Google. If there was not, I didn't know very well to search for information, so the information, the documentation being inside of it was nice. So I found it, this is a Linux I can use to learn how to be a sysadmin. And it was the work of voluntaries, like the GNU Manifest. That was interesting. It was not like that. That was a bunch of people paid to do it. This was from voluntaries. Conclusion. What I am today is very influenced what happened in the beginnings of the 90s. That's where I opened my eyes to the computer world of things. I've tried the power of the main operating system at that time. The ones are still alive today. DOS is still alive inside Windows. I've tried the Unix. I learned to like open software, free software, not just because of it, but because it has advantage of that. I experienced the beginning of Linux. It was very interesting. So it started. Our system, so done by a bunch of curious people, was more effective, more stable, more capabilities than traditional Unix, paid very much by people that wanted to have traditional Unix. And I started very early on Debian. So long, I don't remember very well what year it was, my first installation. Thank you.
If there's questions, so we're trying to get the questions onto the video, and the sound is the audio is the important bit. So either come up here and maybe stand next to Calhariz.
Or can repeat the question, no problem. Any question? Yes?
It's not a question, it's just a comment. I remember that my first ever installation was from a CD that the good people at the Coimbra University sent to me. We could order Debian CDs. And in Portugal, it was the chemistry department of the Coimbra University that used to produce them and ship them. So that was also an interesting way to get
Yes.
access to Debian and free software.
So, if I understand well, your first installation of Debian was from a CD from University of Coimbra, chemistry department. Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember. I think it was Potato.
Potato is 2 dot something,
Yeah, maybe.
if I'm not mistaken.
But, it was around the time that Red Hat decided to end Red Hat Linux and start Fedora Core. Decided, oh, it's a good opportunity to experiment with something new.
Yes. Time to jump out of the Red Hat boat.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we can end the video stream. Thank you all.